President Biden says he and other world leaders made tangible progress on several issues during the G20 summit. He spoke about the global supply chain crisis and the economy during his press conference in Rome after wrapping up the summit. President Biden is stressing his agenda for the upcoming UN climate conference. He stressed that protecting the planet needs to be a global effort.
The power of America showing up and working with our allies and partners to make progress in issues that matter to all of us. And there's really no substitute for face-to-face discussions and negotiations among the leaders when it comes to building understanding and cooperation.
We want to bring in CBS News political contributor Sean Sullivan. Sean is the White House reporter for The Washington Post. Sean, great to see you. First, what struck you most from the president's press conference?
Well, a couple of things stand out. I mean, one, even as he's traveling abroad, he's clearly getting a lot of questions about what is going on domestically right now. And there's a lot of uncertainty that affects his presidency, that affects the Democratic Party, that affects the larger political framework. And we heard him pressed on that. It was notable that he expressed confidence that this coming week he could, we could see action on his agenda, which has been stalled for so long. This infrastructure bill that he's been pushing on Capitol Hill, and also this social spending bill. And we heard the president also pressed on his political standing, and it is not good right now. His political standing across the board, when you look at his approval ratings in key swing states and both nationally as well. He's not doing well right now. The public is not showing a lot of faith in him, at least compared to where they were a few months ago. We heard the president try to brush that aside and say, look, polls go up and down. But the reality is there are elections on Tuesday, including in Virginia, where we're seeing a really, really close race in a state that President Biden won by 10 points, in a state that Democrats haven't lost statewide in a very long time. And these razor close polls that we're seeing in the state is causing a lot of worry in the Democratic Party that they may lose this race, that it may cause greater problems for Democrats and signal greater problems going toward the midterm. So I think we saw the president try to move past that, but I think it's very clear as he travels abroad right now, both in Rome today and then later as he heads to this climate summit in Scotland, that a lot of what is going on here in the United States is uncertain right now, and he's going to have to deal with that and balance both of those things.
Now, the president talked a lot about working with his fellow leaders. He said, they know me, I know them. What impression is President Biden leaving on world leaders at the G20 summit? And is it very different from what leaders thought of former President Trump?
Well, when you look at the approach that President Biden has tried to take both on this international trip and on his previous international trip, he's aimed for sort of a reset. What he's trying to do is go to global leaders and say, look, we're turning the page from the Trump era. America's back. We're ready to lead. We're ready to sort of restore the more traditional diplomatic channels and relationships that we had. I'm willing to work with you guys. So from the White House perspective, there's been a lot of, sort of damage that they feel like they have to repair. And you've seen some of that happen earlier this year, including at this meeting. But it hasn't been without, some hiccups and some things along the way that I think make people scratch their heads. You look at this trip that the president's on right now. He had a meeting with French President Macron where he acknowledged that the submarine deal that the U.S. Reached earlier this year that caused a lot of anger in the French government was clumsy in the president's and President Biden's wording. So it hasn't been totally smooth across the board. But I think the president is trying to send this signal that, look, I'm not Donald Trump. I'm going to work with you on issues like trade, on climate change, other things where, his predecessor did not work with them in those things. But again, it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's not always working as smoothly as I think this president or the White House wants. And of course, the next test is going to be this climate summit and what reception he's going to get, given that his agenda, including his climate agenda, hasn't gotten across the finish line yet in the United States. And so there are going to be some people who I think are going to have questions about the pace of these negotiations in the United States. And we'll see how the president answers those questions.
Well, speaking of that COP26 summit, the president will head to Glasgow tomorrow morning for the UN climate summit. How ready are leaders from the G20 summit to commit to major climate reform? And what does that look like in practice versus on paper?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we'll find out exactly, what comes out of this. I think this was alluded to in the president's press conference today. But when you look at some of the climate initiatives that were agreed to at the G20, not everybody was satisfied with that. So the question is, what are these deliverables going to be? What are they going to be pledging versus actually doing and accomplishing? Because as we've seen this year, and even before this year, there's growing urgency, growing impatience across the world to see world leaders deliver something on the issue of climate. And I think that's one of the reasons, at least, why this White House and this president felt that it was so urgent to try to move ahead with his agenda before going on this international trip. And so what we saw last week from President Biden was laying out a revised framework for his social spending and climate plan in Congress that he's hoping to pass soon, as he mentioned in that press conference. That does include historic investments in climate change. We're talking about a scale that is, unlike anything really we've ever seen. $500 billion, more than $500 billion, in fact, is sort of what we're looking at in terms of what that package would do. But again, it has not passed yet. It has not been enacted. The president hasn't signed it yet, and that's not going to happen before he heads to the summit. I think a couple of months ago, White House officials and the president himself would have hoped that the president could walk into the summit and give a speech saying, look, here is something we just did in the United States. We're taking the lead on this. I just signed a bill that kickstarts historic investments in electric vehicles, other renewable energy sources, but he won't be able to do that. And so a big question, I think, to watch in this summit over the next 2 days is, how do world leaders receive that? Do they look at what's happened in the United States and say, okay, you're right on the verge, we like what we see there? Or do they look at things and say, what is going on? This looks dysfunctional to us. Democrats control Congress and the White House, and yet you still have not been able to push this across the finish line. And then, of course, how does the president respond to that? That is going to be a big question mark as well. So I think there are a lot of question marks about what this summit will be like and what it will mean for President Biden.
Well, we'll definitely keep watching. Sean Sullivan, thank you.
Thanks so much.